Coming up, women from the Oglala Nation speak up about families and culture, and coal is no longer king, but what will take the throne? I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amirawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. After 110 years, the Olympic record of Jim Thorpe has been reinstated. In the 1912 Games, Thorpe claimed an overwhelming gold medal victory in the decathlon and pentathlon. But after the Games, the International Olympic Committee found that Thorpe had been paid to play professional baseball. They stripped him of his medals and records, saying it was against the rules at the time. Since then, supporters of Thorpe have advocated that he is the rightful winner. On Friday, the International Olympic Committee finally agreed. They listed him as the sole winner of the two events he earned a gold medal in. Coming up on Tuesday's ICT Newscast, we'll talk to two advocates, Nedra Darling and fellow Olympic gold medalist Billy Mills, about this news. Well, the state of Wisconsin is changing 28 place names that slur Indigenous women. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland recently signed a directive to replace the names of places with the S word around the country. Interior officials are working with the state's Department of Natural Resources to change names. The department recognized 28 places in Wisconsin that have been deemed derogatory toward Indigenous women. The S word was used to name places by white settlers, mostly in the 1800s. Chris Goodwill, tribal liaison for the state's DNR, says they are preparing for the second round of the federal process. You can find a list of locations with new proposed names on Wisconsin's Natural Resources website. In California, the Autry Museum of the American West premiered Imagining the Indian, the Fight Against Native American Mascotting. The documentary follows decades-long work to remove offensive words, images, and gestures that still dominate non-Native sports culture. Charlie Perry has the story.
The Los Angeles Native community and allies came out to the premiere of Imagining the Indian, the Fight Against Native American Mascotting. There have been recent name changes to high-profile sports teams. The documentary shows event attendees why this work is far from over. Co-directed by Cheyenne citizen Ben West, the Autry couldn't have been a better place to have the premiere. West's father, W. Richard West Jr., acted as president and CEO of the Autry for 8 years until his retirement in June of 2021.
This premiere of Imagining the Indian at the Autry is indeed a homecoming. Not only in the sense that my entire immediate family, my father, mother, sister, myself, and my two nephews all live in LA, but the Autry is like a second home to us. My father spent nearly a decade here. We filmed several interviews here, and I have some footage in the movie that's taken from the Autry. And in that sense, it feels entirely appropriate to be premiering Imagining the Indian at the Autry Museum of the American West.
200 eager attendees filled the Wells Fargo Theater at the Autry for the sold-out special event. Co-producer Yancey Burns and co-director Ben West presented a pre-screening introduction for the film. A post-screening Q&A was held featuring co-director Aviva Kempner, interviewees Jolie Proudfit, Amy West, and W. Richard West Jr. Special guest actor Kiowa Gordon of AMC's Dark Winds joined the panel as well. Attendee Ray Zaragoza left the Autry feeling educated and inspired by the film.
So let's put a stop to it. I really think that it just takes a few people in each community to really make a difference. So, yeah, it was an incredible film and definitely taught me a lot, even as someone who has been a part of this movement for many years.
For more information on where you can watch the film, visit imaginingtheindianfilm.org. In Los Angeles, California, Charlie Perry, ICT News.
In Alaska, subsistence living for residents on the Yukon River is in danger. For the second year in a row, chum fishing will be closed because of projected poor run sizes of the species. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game estimates there will be less than 300,000 fish returning to the river. This is compared to the average, which is around 1 million. 2021 saw the lowest fall chum run on record, and the continued closures are economically and culturally straining Yukon River residents. Currently, state game managers are keeping chum fishing closed in an effort to give the fish a chance to spawn. However, fishing will remain open for other species on the river, including red, pink, and coho salmon, along with non-salmon fish. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, a tribal elder's advice on reproductive health. And what does the future of renewable energy look like now that coal is no longer king? But first, meet an Oglala Lakota woman who shares her concern about the environment. Stay with us. She's an educator and an advocate, and now she's a Bush Fellow. Awarded to leaders in the Dakotas and Minnesota, the fellowship gives Janice Richards the means to make a difference. Welcome, Janice, and congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
So let's talk about this fellowship at a high level. Tell us about what you hope to accomplish.
I applied for the Bush Fellowship after retiring from Oglala College for 30 years. I worked there for 30 years, and I went on a journey to see what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I applied for the Bush Fellowship, and just reading the opportunities Bush can offer. And so I applied, and the process was really, for me, it helped me to really be grateful from my humble beginnings of how I grew up here on a Pioneer Indian reservation and all the things that I accomplished while living here, from going to school to volunteering in the community, working with youth and elderly in an area of health and wellness. So I was able to apply, and I got selected, and I was just so grateful. And I guess I really don't have no words to explain the feeling I feel whenever I talk about the Bush Fellowship and the opportunity it's going to afford me for the next 2 years.
I want to talk about the role of mothers, because that's part of your goals here. Maybe tell us about what you envision.
Okay. I am a mother of 2 sons, and I have 2 grandsons right now. I was raised by my grandmother, and she was always teaching me things in the future. When you start having children, this is going to be your responsibility in the future. So she was always teaching me as I was growing up. And one of the things that, for me, I really feel passionate about is how women, I guess for me, if you heal a woman, then you heal the whole family. And so that is my intention for the Bush Fellowship, is to create a family and wellness center where a prenatal mother, the services will begin immediately with the prenatal mother. And once the child is born, there are ceremonies that we have here as Lakota people that we will start implementing and having the families take part in those ceremonies. Because for me, I truly believe that the foundation of everything that we do begins with our culture. That our culture is so rich in our language and our ceremonies and our teachings that if we were to start working with the mother and the child and practicing these ceremonies, and including the father, then the future for our children is going to be they'll be in a better place in the future.
Maybe talk about the ways in which cultural ways and cultural knowledge can help in creating healthy parenting for Native children.
In our, I guess for us Lakota people, we had a natural way of life. We had our language. We have our ceremonies. We have our teachings. And one in particular that I really feel really strongly about is the Changleshka. Is known as Circle of Life. Within that Changleshka, then all these ceremonies and the language are embedded in that circle of life. And it takes you from birth to the time you reach the elder stage. And so it comes full circle. And so our culture is so rich that for me, if we really start building on that natural way of life, which is our culture, and start implementing and practicing our language and our ceremonies, imagine the ripple effect that it's going to have on the next generations to come.
Absolutely. And maybe we only have about 30 seconds left, but maybe talk about how you being awarded this fellowship allows you to continue doing this work, because I understand you do get a sum of money to be able to, contribute in this way.
Yes. With the Bush Fellowship, I guess, is to really look at the skills about self-care and how about leadership. How am I going to sustain myself as I'm moving along in this journey? And one of the things they really emphasize is self-care. How can we take care of ourselves so we become a better leader within our communities, and learning the skills and getting knowledge as we're going along? And one of the my goals with the Bush Fellowship is to visit the Carlisle Indian School. And the reason why I say that is because in order for me to help families, in order for me to help other women, I have to heal my the traumas in my life also. And I've been in recovery for 29 years. And so I think for me, visiting Carlisle Indian School is part of healing the intergenerational trauma that many of our people carry today, which impacts our lives. So because I have my mother's father, my grandfather was sent to Carlisle Indian School, and he attended school there. So it was important for him and my grandmother that everything that we did is to remember where we came from. They emphasized with me the importance of our language to be able to still speak. So today I still speak our language.
Well, Janice Richards, unfortunately, we've run out of time here. I'd love to visit with you more, but thank you so much for being here.
All right, thank you.
At the end of June this year, the hallmark case Roe v. Wade was overturned. Some were happy, others were not. Cecilia Firethunder is an Oglala nurse, community health planner, and tribal leader. In 2004, she was the first woman elected as president of her tribal nation. She served until being impeached in the summer of 2006. Firethunder was impeached because she proposed a women's health clinic for the Pine Ridge Reservation. She is now breaking down the recent Supreme Court decision. Let's take a look.
That recent decision had nothing to do with anything but male privilege. And our bodies historically, let's take a look at Native women. Way before white men came, Native women had total control over their bodies. And no matter what anybody says, our bodies belong to us. My eyes, my nose, my ears, all parts of me belong to me, including my reproductive system. My reproductive system is the greatest gift that God, the Creator, gave to women. People say, what do you mean? I mean, men can't have babies, can they? Huh? So that gift of bringing forth the next generation was given to women. And then I used to say, wonder why they gave it to us. Well, because we're pretty strong and awesome, right? So the other part of that gift given to us to bring forth the next generation is that we have to be mindful about when and where we bring forth the next generation. Who the sperm donor will be. Make sure we get a good, strong, good-looking Indian guy sperm, right? And bring forth the next generation. So, and then the other teaching that many tribes have is to not marry outside. Remember, so many of us heard those stories, and they always said, we can't marry somebody within your, group. You can marry another Indian, but as long as they're Indian, yeah. I said, well, how do you know they're Indian? Well, you take a blood sample. If they have arrows in their bloodstream, they're Indian. We always laugh and tease about stuff like that. So my passion for really it's about women's right to choose. That's the bottom line. And so what the Supreme Court did was well, how can I frame this in a good way? They acquiesced or gave in to the white male supremacy. Also, not only the white male supremacy, but also the whole Christian movement. You see, the Christianity has no business in making political decisions. You cannot make a decision based on your religious beliefs. That's what the Constitution says. So if you're a senator, a congressman, or a member of the Supreme Court, you have to keep your religious beliefs out of your decision. You have to make the decision based on the Constitution of the United States. And nowhere in the Constitution of the United States does it allow religious teachings to enter any decision making. So being pregnant and not finishing and terminating that pregnancy has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with anything except a woman's right to choose. And what's wrong with that? Are we less than? Huh? And so my message has always been, my body, my choice, my decision. And how dare you tell me what I can or can't do with my body? Because we are given the capacity to think, the capacity to, what we say, look at, balance things. We're no more or no less than a male. You see, and so sometimes at this decision, all it did was it brought us back down. Not just Native women, but all women in America. That choice to choose what I do with my body was taken away from me again. But I mean, and that's all the bottom line. I always tell stories about how long time ago, before the white man came and Christopher Columbus accidentally found us, which he did, that we lived in balance and harmony across this country. We had healers, we had medicine. And in many, many tribal communities, it was okay to terminate a pregnancy. And then the other thing that I tell people is there's a spirit, a little spirit. Because when a male and an egg come together and spark, a spirit enters into that. There's a spirit in that early growing piece. So we, in many cultures, have ceremonies that acknowledge that baby spirit, that spirit in that fetus, growing fetus. And those early ceremonies acknowledge it, and we have a way to let them know you can't stay. So we want you to know that you have to leave. And then we have ceremonies, so we release the spirit. So the spirit knows that it can come back to somebody else. The right to life, people don't even look at that embryo or the fetus in that context. They look at it as killing, and murder. Those are the words they use. Never once have I ever heard any of those right to life people, the senators or whoever don't support this, talk about the spirit of that fetus. So this is where the difference is. And not only Indian cultures, but I'm sure around the world, before Christian influence, there were ways and methods. And the bottom line is this. If I was pregnant and I chose to not have that baby, and I made amends with that and told the little spirit, you're going to have to leave. I can't take care of you. And then that little spirit will know, so the spirit leaves. And then the rest of it is just, what is it? Flesh and bones can be removed. See, so somehow people lost touch in that context. And so I just think that what happened is more and more women in America are going to be standing up, and we're going to turn it, we're going to make sure, yeah. And then why do you have to pass laws? If you really believe in humanity, you're going to let the women make choices for themselves. So someone posted on my Facebook page, if my uterus was AK-47, I'd have more rights. So this is all about women and our rights. Women as human beings. Women we are not less than. This decision made us go back down again. And it's unfortunate that it's all women. It doesn't say white women or black women or Indian women. It's all women with a reproductive system. And so I just think that it's a battle cry for women in America. We're going to rise. We're going to, once again, hold hands and do something about it.
More and more energy advocates are calling for clean energy solutions. What does this mean for coal-rich tribes like the Navajo Nation? ICT's Mark Trahant has been exploring this in his Indigenous Economics project. Welcome, Mark.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Leah.
So at a high level, this is the question that so many of us have been wanting an answer to. What does a cleaner energy future mean for coal tribes?
Well, the big thing is we have to stop using coal, and the time limit is really increasing. By 2030, we've got to stop basically be in a position where we're declining every year in terms of energy use that's fossil fuel based, and coal is the dirtiest of all the fossil fuels. So coal is probably going to have to go sooner rather than later. So that means for tribes, a combination of a loss of revenue because they've just counted on coal for so long for jobs, but it also means a change in how we think about energy.
We saw over the weekend that Joe Manchin of West Virginia said he would not support the climate agenda that the Biden administration was putting forth. When we're talking about tribal nations, what does all of this mean for the future of climate change?
Sure. Well, and Senator Manchin's really interesting because he comes from a coal background and he's been very supportive. And a lot of the people in coal just don't see this as the end of the road. There are lots of maneuvers going on, such as pretense about clean coal energy and ways to move coal forward and to prop it up. But the funny thing is the markets have already decided that coal is over. And so it's almost irrelevant what government does in that respect. And tribes are part of that.
We've talked to various tribal leaders who talk about renewable energy being the future. Maybe talk about what kinds of things tribes are doing right now.
Oh, there's so many interesting things going on with clean energy, and it really is an opportunity. And one, we don't have time for this today, but one fun one is what they're doing with batteries. Clean energy is everything from solar to geothermal. Tribes are doing things differently. For example, with one major one major solar project, they're building the towers taller so that cows can go underneath them and still graze. They're looking for geothermal is probably the cleanest source of energy, and it also produces lithium as a byproduct. So there's a lot of things going on that are really inspiring right now.
Absolutely. Well, I want to look to the future of your Indigenous economics project. What kinds of stories do you have coming up?
This week in the ICT Digital, we'll have a story about corporate boards and how Native Americans are starting to reach into that world. And we'll have a broadcast version very shortly.
And you actually recently took a trip to Chicago. When will we see more reporting about what happened there?
This week. And that's a great story because Mary Smith is a member of the Cherokee Nation. She was the COO for the Indian Health Service. And she decided she wanted to be on boards, developed a plan, and has been successful at it.
Well, Mark Trahan, thank you so much.
Happy to do it.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
ICT News is produced by Indig Public Media.
This program is made possible in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.